In the world of martial arts, Bruce Lee is practically a god. His speed was the stuff of legend, his power was mythical. But the one fight that would define his entire legacy was a fight he was convinced he'd lost. In the fall of 1964, behind locked doors in Oakland, California, Bruce Lee fought a duel against a rival master. There were no cameras and no reporters. There were only about 7 people in the room to see it, and what they witnessed would be argued about for the next half a century. But for Bruce, the outcome was crystal clear, and it had nothing to do with who won or lost. It was about the terrifying realization that everything he thought he knew about fighting was wrong. This is the real story of the fight that created Jeet Kune Do. By 1964, Bruce Lee wasn't just making waves in the Bay Area's martial arts scene. He was the storm. He was young, brilliant, and let's be honest, incredibly arrogant. He'd moved to Oakland to open his second martial arts institute, and his philosophy was as radical as his technique. He believed martial arts shouldn't be a collection of dusty, dead patterns. It had to be alive. And here's the part that really ticked people off. He believed its secrets belonged to anyone who wanted to learn, no matter their race. In the hyper-traditional world of 1960s American Kung Fu, this was basically heresy. Lee was teaching white, black, and Hispanic students right alongside his Chinese ones, breaking a sacred, unwritten rule. To the established masters in San Francisco's Chinatown, Lee was a loud-mouthed outsider disrespecting their heritage. They wanted him shut down. The man they chose to deliver the message? Wong Jack Man, a respected master of Northern Shaolin and other arts. Wong was the same age as Lee, but his total opposite. Quiet, traditional, and the embodiment of the old guard. So, how did the challenge actually happen? Well, that depends on who you ask. Lee's wife, Linda, has always said that Chinatown's masters sent Wong with an ultimatum. If Lee lost, he had to shut down his school, or at least stop teaching non-Chinese students. But Wong's side tells a totally different story. They claim Lee was the one who issued an open challenge at a public demo, boasting he could beat any martial artist in San Francisco. Wong, they say, was just defending his community's honor. He even said he had no problem with Lee teaching other students. His own school was open to everyone. Whatever the real reason, the lines were drawn. A formal challenge was made. The duel was set for Lee's own school in Oakland. No press, no cameras. This wasn't for show. This was for honor. That autumn night in Oakland, the tension inside the school was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Fewer than a dozen people were there to witness it. On Wong's side were his supporters, and on Bruce's, his pregnant wife Linda and his associate, James Lee. As for the rules, there really weren't any. Accounts suggest Wong asked about limits. No eye jabs, no groin strikes, but in the end, it was a no-holds-barred fight. The only way it would end was when one man couldn't continue. The second the fight started, the story splits into 2 completely different realities. Linda Lee Cadwell, who was right there, said the fight was brutally fast. She wrote that after a formal bow, Bruce exploded forward with his signature straight punches. Wong, she claimed, was overwhelmed, and within a minute, his friends tried to step in. According to Linda, Wong then turned and ran, with Bruce chasing him down, tackling him, and pummeling him until he pleaded for it to stop. The whole affair, she says, was over in about 3 minutes. But Wong Jack Man's version? Completely different. Writing in a Chinese newspaper, he claimed Lee came at him like a wild bull before they even finished saluting. Faking a friendly handshake to jab at his eyes, Wong insisted he fought defensively, holding back his most dangerous techniques for fear of seriously injuring. Lee, he swore he never ran. He described a much longer fight, 20 to 25 minutes, that ended because both men, especially a winded Bruce Lee, were too exhausted to go on. Another witness, William Chen, agreed with the longer duration and called the outcome a tie. So what really happened? The truth is probably lost somewhere in that messy, chaotic struggle. This wasn't a movie. It was a raw, ugly fight between 2 highly skilled masters, and the only people who saw it had their own loyalties and their own version of the truth. But here's the most important part of the entire story, the one thing that cuts through all the he said, she said. It doesn't actually matter who won, because in his own head Bruce Lee had failed. Even his wife, who describes a decisive victory, admitted that Bruce was furious with his performance. Winning in 3 minutes felt like an eternity to him. He had beaten the man, sure, but he had come face to face with his own limitations. In an interview with Black Belt magazine, Lee, without ever naming Wong, confessed how frustrated he was. He talked about chasing his opponent, foolishly punching the back of his head, and feeling his fists swell up. He was completely gassed. His stamina had nearly failed him. And that was the terrifying realization. His traditional Wing Chun was great up close, but it was inefficient against an opponent who refused to stand still. Chasing Wong around the room showed him that his cardio was a joke. And what if the fight had gone to the ground? Wing Chun had no answer for that. His art, he realized, was too rigid and too formal for the chaos of a real fight. So yeah, he may have won, but he won ugly. He felt his performance was sloppy and exhausting. The victory felt hollow because all he could see were his own mistakes. And he knew that on a different night, those mistakes could have led to a devastating defeat. Most people would have taken the win and moved on. Bruce Lee obsessed over his failure. That fight with Wong Jack Man became the catalyst that transformed him from a martial artist into a martial philosopher. It was the moment he knew he had to tear it all down to create something new. This brutal self-assessment kicked off a revolution in his training. He started questioning everything. His cardio was insufficient, so he became a fanatic about running and endurance. He saw the limitations of Wing Chun's footwork and began studying the movement of Western boxers and fencers to learn how to cut off an opponent's escape. He started to discard what was useless and absorb what was useful, no matter the source. The rigid forms were replaced by a fluid, adaptable and brutally efficient system. He wasn't just practicing a style anymore. He was developing a philosophy. In 1967, he gave it a name, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. It was a philosophy built on practicality, flexibility and efficiency, born not from quiet meditation, but from the sweat, blood, and frustration of a real fight that almost broke him. The great irony here is that Wong Jack Man, whether he was there to enforce tradition or just defend his honor, inadvertently helped create the very revolution he stood against. By pushing Bruce Lee to his physical and strategic limits, he forced him to evolve into a legend. For decades, the story of that fight remained shrouded in rumors and arguments. Wong Jack Man himself rarely spoke of it and passed away in 2018, taking his full side of the story with him. But the true legacy of that night was never about who won or lost a private duel. Its importance is measured by what happened after. The fight exposed a weakness in Bruce Lee, and instead of hiding it, he forged it into his greatest strength. He realized that true mastery wasn't about perfecting an ancient style. It was about abandoning style altogether to find what truly worked. The world would come to know his name through movies, but his legend was born in a private room, in a fight that only 7 people ever saw. It was the fight that gave birth to an idea, and that idea would change martial arts forever.